All right, y'all. Welcome to the state of flow state. It's going to be a great day today because you're going to learn different ways that you can get inside the zone. Who we have lined up today for you first is John Lacy. He's the president and COO of Idea Grove. And Idea Grove is an awesome PR tech firm based in Dallas. And we actually got to know John from his Fast Company article. From that article, we learned about how his company has intentionally built a flow state environment, and he's been a great mentor to our agency. What you'll also have here is Kara. Kara is right from our team at 368. We're being mentored by John Lacy, but we also implement our own flow state system here at 368. We'll be sharing about how we took these lessons and how's it working with our team. And then finally, we have Lauren Vaccarello here. I'm so excited to have her. She is the CMO at Salesloft. She is an investor, but she is also someone that just tells it like it is. And I think what's really valuable here is that when you watch flow state webinars, you tend to just hear from the agency side of like, this is how we build more creative time. What you don't hear enough is how does the brand side actually feel about it? How does the client side actually feel about it? I think what Lauren's going to bring here is something very different, is that one, there's a lot of fears in our head that probably we're making up. But two, is that how do we set the right expectations? This is going to be such a great talk, y'all. And I'm going to kick us off with this first question here. And I'm going to ask every single person here to answer, from Kara, Lauren, to John. Kara, why don't you answer this first? Then we'll go to John, then Lauren. Describe the feeling of what does it feel like when you're in flow state? And when was the last time you felt this, and what did you get done?
I actually last week had a moment where I got to be in flow. I had found this really good article that I was reading about some operations related stuff. And I found myself like 2 hours in, just like in the weeds of it and like writing down ideas and thinking about applications of how we can take some of this information and apply it to our own people ops. At first, though, I will say when we started talking about flow, it felt a little daunting of like, what am I going to do with all of this focus time? Or also, am I still going to feel productive? I know a lot of the times we get into the meeting culture that we have found ourselves in that we're trying to work away from, is that you almost don't feel productive unless you're in all of these meetings, which is honestly the exact opposite of what we're trying to get to. So it was a little daunting at first that like, am I even going to still feel as productive? And I have found in the limited time that we've been implementing flow, I have felt highly productive. I felt more impactful too, because the information and the work that I'm doing has a broader effect, a broader impact. So yeah, a little scary at first, but you know, good things don't come in your comfort zone. So
Couldn't agree more. John, what do you think? And y'all, for those of y'all in the chat, feel free to answer the same question here. I'll post the question here. Describe what you like. What does it feel like when you're in flow state, and when was the last time you felt it? Because like we're going to be learning from each other. So John, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so the last time I was in flow state, it was I was doing something, administrative. It was probably not the most exciting thing. I think I was updating legal agreements for our company, but I do remember that kind of the first time that I experienced this. I started my career as a software developer, and I remember even in college where I was in the middle of some code and I was debugging, and kind of time disappeared. To the point where it actually got me in trouble with my girlfriend at the time, because I would always be like, hey, I'm coming home in 30 minutes. And then I'd be in the middle of this routine, debugging. And then it'd be an hour or two later, I'd be like, hey, I'm home in 30 minutes. And then it would go back into that cycle. And so when you're in that state, everything disappears, and you're really, deep into the work of whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Like time just flies back. You're just in the zone.
Yeah.
And this clock doesn't even exist on your wrist. Lauren, what about you?
I'm going to take a completely different angle on places where I find flow. And you two have described the work side of finding flow so well. As like, you're in the zone, you don't have, time doesn't exist. You get more done than you realize. One of the places that I get into flow state the fastest and the most is actually when I go rock climbing. So it's interesting. It's doing it at work, but the non-work activities are such a good way to sort of find flow and to train your brain. And for me, if I take like an easy route and I go climb, it's exercise, and it is a form of exercise, but it's when I push myself to do something I don't think I can do. and it's above my skill set, that's the time where sort of flow triggers in my brain. And it's this idea of struggle leads to flow. And then all of a sudden I will stop thinking and be completely present on the wall and just go up and scale it in a way that I'll come down going, but I can't do that. I guess I can if I sort of get out of it. So for me, that is the last place and one of my favorite places to find flow.
Yeah. I know Tara, our director of strategy, is in this room here. She would agree with you on the rock climbing stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely agree too. Is like you have to stretch when you're in flow state too. Like you have to feel challenged. Otherwise, it's kind of like, it's checklisting versus actually investing your mind and your focus in it. We got some pretty good responses here. Is Brittany, thanks for breaking the ice, being the first one answering the question. But like during creative activities or kayaking, right? Similar to rock climbing, that has to be a challenge. Micah, flow is pure focus, locked in. Brian, you mentioned here that you're working on a visual brand system. Darian said here is like, a new idea for our platform. Got the entire idea done and presented it. Got great feedback and told us something we could resell to clients on their platform. Super cool. That is awesome, y'all. But now we're going to get into the specifics here. John, you're up first here because we're going to talk about that article that you wrote that you probably had no idea was going to get all over Fast Company and have us giving you a call. So we got to know you through this Fast Company article called Slack and Zoom Were Distracting Our Teams, and Here's How We Regained Focus. In the article, you mentioned that Zoom and Slack were actually dividing your teams rather than bringing them together. Can you tell us just a little bit more about that? And even more, if you can explain what shallow work and deep work looks like in the relationship between the two.
Yeah, sure. So when I started working with Idea Grove in October 2019, I quickly assessed the environment there. And one of the things that I kept hearing was that our dopamine-driven desire to respond to Slack almost immediately was creating problems, right? And there are studies out there that show it takes 20 minutes to kind of get into a task and only 20 seconds to break that focus and have to kind of restart over. So we really did take a look. I did a lot of research, and we really did take a look at the different tools we were using and the different ways we are working. And we tried to figure out a way to allow our team to the time to actually get the work done. And so we started putting some boundaries in place that would allow people to move into what we call deep work, right? And deep work is very similar or kind of correlated to that state of flow, where you need to kind of get into the work and you need to be able to think about what you're doing and you need to be able to concentrate without having these external distractions. And so we started putting boundaries in place and started talking with people about not answering Slack immediately, right? And giving people that time and that permission to realize they were using an asynchronous tool in a synchronous way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you find like, I'm going to throw this actually to the other panelists here. How much of it do you feel like it's getting permission or giving permission for flow state? Do you think a lot of it is in our heads on like why we don't deserve the right to focus?
I mean, I can jump in on this one. I mean, I do. We're in this environment now where you feel the social pressure of someone messaged me, so I need to respond. Someone sent me an email, so I need to respond. And we're letting these external stimulations control us and our time. And it is, to John's point, incredibly distracting. And it's the constant dopamine hit. And something that I learned that I thought was really sort of interesting is when you have this, you get the Slack message, you get the text, and you keep going and you're getting all of those sort of constant dopamine hits, which are incredibly addictive. The flip side of that is if we're getting those all the time, it actually then becomes harder for us to find joy in small things.
Mm-hmm.
So not only are we being distracted constantly and not able to get into real work, sitting and reading a book or spending just like quiet time with someone you care about that you used to find joy in, your brain, you can't access that anymore. So not only are we losing productivity, we are also losing our ability to find happiness in regular life things.
Man, yeah, that snaps. Like
For us is definitely one of the things I think we're noticing we're going to have to be more diligent about holding ourselves accountable to. I know I'm feeling it already. The culture that we've had up to this point is that Slack is a synchronous tool
Mhm.
that you have to respond very quickly, give people the answers they need. And I know that that's going to be one of the things we have to overcome is giving the permission, but also giving the permission to our team and also allowing them to give it back to us and hold us accountable. It's really difficult to not want to respond quickly. And these are habits that we've had in place for years. And so it's going to take time. But that's the part I'm most excited about is actually the freedom to really do your work and not prove you're working by doing something that's actually distracting you from what it is you should be doing. So interesting sort of segue into the flow plan that we have in place. And that's one of the ones. Slack is dangerous. It can be very dangerous.
Yeah. So Kara, I'm going to go right to you then for your question is that, Slack can be dangerous, but like what questions, we're going through our own organization, like flow state environment right now. We've adapted it actually from John's model and it seems like it's been received well. It's starting to get traction, but of course there's some doubts. If we want to create a whole entire environment of flow state for an organization, what questions do you think teams must ask when you're building that kind of flow state calendar, as you will?
Yeah, I think it's important to make sure that your culture is ready for that and that it's something that they find value in. So really assessing the feedback that you'll get when you start to talk about what a flow state could look like in the work. Because if you build something that could be totally disruptive to the team or that they're not ready to accept, then you're doing the exact opposite of what the flow plan or a flow state is intending to do. So that's something that we started to kind of shop the idea around word of mouth, and we kept getting a lot of great, oh, that would be awesome if I didn't have to get interrupted by meetings or I could close my Slack out. There was always some hesitation about how we actually are going to do that and make it work. And that's where myself and Jeremy, our chief creative officer, has come in to really help like put a plan in place. It's something that is going to take time. So I think the big question you have to ask first is your team ready for it? Because you don't want to create a plan that's going to be devoid of any buy-in from everyone else. So yeah, and then I think making sure that as you do develop it, the questions are, how is it working? Is this actually what we thought it was going to be? So that you can iterate enough to make it meaningful, but not enough to give people whiplash of change management. So we're finding that sweet spot now. Something that I'm going to be looking forward to is how do we measure what success looks like and is it really working for people?
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see how that plays out. And I've gotten a lot of great info and insight from John in conversations about how it worked for them. So yeah, making sure your team is actually ready for it is a great question to start with.
How do you think we can encourage these team members to set boundaries for themselves? Because this is a lot of a discipline game. We're finding out.
Yeah, let me jump in here because I will tell you, first of all, we're still on this journey, right? It's one of those things where we are having to just remind the team that it's okay to turn off Slack and go deep into the work that you're doing. And so for us, it really is that journey. It's a making sure that the team knows that they have the permission, and leadership constantly reinforcing that we've given them that permission to kind of work in that style. But we are on that journey. We are certainly not perfect, and we've got to constantly revisit it.
Yeah, we got to model that behavior. I'm going to actually pass over to Lauren right now because Lauren, you have an interesting journey yourself.
Yep.
Is that you've been learning about the science of flow state. And this is pretty much like last time we chatted, you're like, oh yeah, I'm taking this class at the Flow Research Collective, which is like probably like one of the biggest places you can learn about flow state and the science behind it. Can you tell us a little bit more about those conditions you've learned that are essential to flow state environment? And then was there anything from the class that completely changed your opinion of what flow state is?
100%. So like you mentioned, I took this class with Flow Research Collective. It's Stephen Cutler. He wrote a book on this. I realized, so the background in this is I was completely burnt out. I need to figure out how to not do this again. I need to not burn myself out like this again. And I remember getting in these periods where I loved work and I'm totally in the zone. How do I do this? A friend said, you should read this book. And I said, that's not my learning style right now. My brain is not processing information. A class is better. So I take this class and it's based in both the neuroscience and the biology behind finding flow. And there were some things that resonated with me a lot. One of them was to get into flow, you need struggle triggers flow. So you can't just like sit down and say, everything's great. Now I'm going to fall into flow. Something needs to happen. And one of the things for me with that was like, and we went through a lot of exercises on what are the things that cause you, what has led up to this. And for me, one of my triggers is time. And if I don't have time, if I'm on an insane time crunch, I can drop into flow super, super quickly and get work done really fast. So initially I said, oh no, I need to find another flow trigger because that's terrible that it's like, I have 30 minutes to get this done and now I can do it. And it was, no, if that's your trigger, find ways to artificially create that time pressure for you versus finding a new one, which I liked. And then the other piece, which was even more impactful for me, was this idea of active recovery. So you have struggle, you get into flow, then you go back into sort of your steady state and you need to focus on recovery. And it's this idea that if you want to be high performing, you want to get a lot out, you need to take care of yourself. And there's a huge amount of science behind this. And it's the put your mask on before someone else's. And within active recovery, they literally went through, here's specifically what you can be thinking about. And it's every single day, you need to have at least an hour, if not a 2-hour block of active recovery. And that is not sitting watching Netflix and vegging out, which don't get me wrong, I love doing. But part of it was when you sit and watch TV, you have all of this stimulus in your brain. So you're trying to shut off, but your brain is going. So you can't actually recover in that versus if you go for a walk in nature, you get a massage, you do yoga, things like that, that sort of shut your brain off and let you recover. So it's every day, spend an hour, every week, spend 3 to 4 hours that are focused completely on recovery. And don't feel guilty, because I felt guilty about recovery. I felt guilty about getting a massage every week because it seems like I shouldn't be doing this. I should be working.
Self-care though, right?
It's self-care. And it's like giving me the permission, and it's the science behind it of if you practice self-care, you will actually be more productive. That I just found so powerful.
Why do you think people prevent themselves from giving self-care so much? Is it because they feel guilty to others, like they're beholden to others?
I think it is. And it was something that in the chat earlier that Lisa had said is that like, now that I'm working at home, I feel this pressure to respond and prove that I'm working. And maybe this is an American thing, but we have this like intense pressure to, we need to be working. We need to be the perfect employee and showing up and like responding to everything, and activity equals like I'm doing my job well. And it makes us feel bad about taking care of ourselves. And I'll be honest, like I got a massage on Monday and I got it during technically my work day. And I could have like hit it on my calendar and put like DNS or made up some fake meeting, but I was like, no, I need to like lead from the top. It is 2:00 in the afternoon and I am going to get a massage, and my org needs to know, first of all, leave me alone because I'm getting a massage, but it's also okay to go do this in the middle of the day and not hide this, because me doing this makes me better later.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just accelerate to that next question for you is like, as a leader, then what obstacles do you need to clear for your team when helping them build that intentional time then to do their best work? I mean, on top of that is like, so Laura, when you're training like leaders to respect the boundaries too, how do you do that? Because like your team is so used to being always on.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
A lot of it for me is leading from the top of I'm very, very clear on like, these are the hours I work. These are my boundaries. This is my time. I have told my team repeatedly, I was like, I have a vacation planned. I will not check email. I will not check text. I'm not on. If the world is on fire, call the fire department. I'm not available. It's not because I don't love you. It's because this is important to me, and setting those boundaries as much as possible of like how people are going to mirror. So I will say that these are my hours, and I will also tell my org of, look, I'm not going to reply to email right away. This is not what I do. And I literally have blocks on my calendar that are like, I will check email from 12 to 12:30 and from 5 to 6. That is the only time I will look at my email during the day. I will tell my team the only time I look at Slack during the day are these 2 time periods. If something is really an emergency, you can text me. I also have do not disturb on my phone, so I really won't see your text message unless you're like one of the 5 people that gets to disrupt my do not disturb. So it really is like showing them how to do this, setting it that it's okay, and creating that environment. And like John said, it's very much a journey. I'm not perfect on this at all because, the dopamine hits are real. And sometimes I just want to like faff about on Slack.
Yeah. I mean, that's super real. Like you got to model the behavior.
Yeah.
And like all of us on this call, this panelist call here, knows that like it's all about modeling the behavior and doing it for yourself. Self-care is definitely the theme here, and permission.
Yeah.
John, I'm going to lead you with this next question here, because in that article that you sent, Lisa, by the way, thank you for the assist. You got to it before I could. You shared that your big aha moment was understanding how to use asynchronous and synchronous communication intentionally into your workflows. Can you explain how you're using that in practice today and the importance of setting expectations around those communication methods?
Yeah, well, Lauren kind of hit this on the head earlier, right? And it's that expectation of immediate response that comes with kind of our natural state, especially with having now this device in our pockets that you can respond almost instantaneously if you want from anywhere in the world almost these days. And so when I was doing the research with my team and we were looking at how we use these things, we actually had to step back and say, what was the original intention for how these were supposed to be used, right? And when we moved from, I used to have to call someone and leave them a voicemail, right? The call was a synchronous activity. Leaving the voicemail became an asynchronous activity. Email was supposed to continue that asynchronous. I send you a message when I have time to send you a message. You respond when you have time to respond. That there was no early expectation, or in the early days of this, of an immediate response. But as we progressed and as we've gotten these phones and as we've moved into things like Slack, that natural tendency to automatically or immediately respond has become prevalent. And we had to step back and break that. And again, we outlined permissions for our team to say, look, if you send an email, you should not expect an immediate response. If you send a Slack, you should not expect immediate response. If you need an immediate response, pick up the phone and call someone, or pick up the phone and text someone, because that would be that indicator of, hey, I've got something going on that I need your help now. And so again, we've given our team permission. We're still on that journey. We're still trying to make sure that we're actually living this, but we've at least kind of set those boundaries.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask like one elephant question in the room. When people say they're always in flow state, do you believe them? Some people think they're always.
It would be almost impossible. I feel like the amount of energy you would have to exert to be in flow for like a work day, you would literally work 1 day a week. It would be almost impossible, because to give that much focus and effort and energy would just be, I don't know that there's enough, like creativity and that kind of thinking is not infinite, right? So you want to reserve it for the most important times. And I think that reserving it for the most important times is really like, you have to do that. So I couldn't imagine being in flow all the time. I'd be tired. I'd be very tired.
I think it's actually a sign of like a mental health, like legitimately a mental health issue. If you are in this all of the time, like our brains can't function like that. And it's you need on and off and on and off.
Yeah.
So you're mentioning the self-care, that active recovery is scientifically, they're telling you like it's necessary in order to be in flow in a way that's really productive. So that's really interesting information to hear. Like, it's always nice when you can back it up with scientific facts. And it's not just like, I feel like I need to do self-care. It's like, no, you actually do. Your body needs it. Your mind needs it.
When it said like every week you need to spend like 4 hours like practicing active recovery, I was like, so what you're saying is spa day every week? Because I heard spa day every week.
I think Cecil here said like, get a massage, writing it down.
It's a takeaway.
But look, self-care is important. And Yeah, I'm glad that y'all said that. So like I see Shelly said here, COVID unfortunately caused the lines of work and home life to become
Mhm.
blurred. We had
Mhm.
nothing else to distract us but work/connect to people via Skype and Zoom. And now we have to figure out how to reestablish boundaries, how to allow ourselves to find our joy, our connectivity outside of work. How much time do you make room? Do y'all ever make time for joy and make time for like stuff outside of work? Like, let's talk about that because like calendar blocking is the big topic today. How much time are you giving to yourselves to find joy and happiness?
My thing is the gym after work. Like most people on the team know I'm adamant about going to the gym. Mostly because it's like, it's a great way that is my self-care because not only do I have a close network of friends there that I'm, just hanging out with and getting to have conversations with, but also that self-care, that is a state of flow, but in a way that I find really joyful. So that's one of those things that I prioritize that as much as I can. And it's like I'm going to head out at 6 p.m. Like that's it. I'm heading out at 6 p.m. If I can get to the gym by then, and I'm going to do that class for at least an hour, hour and a half and be done. So yeah, that's my little moments of joy every day.
Yeah. Look, I just put on my calendar because like family time gives me joy. I believe it's scheduled. It's important to you. We have 2 hours of family time every other day where me and my brother and my wife get together just to relax. I think that's important, y'all, is like you have to schedule time today because our calendars, oof, it's
Mhm.
brutal. Um,
There, there is a whole, not to go back to the sort of class I took with the Flow Research Collective, but my favorite episode, webinar, virtual class was all about calendaring
mm,
because I am the worst with my calendar because I give too much of my time. It's all over the place. My calendar like runs my life. And I know that about myself. And the whole concept behind it is that's great. You need to build blocks of time. So think of your calendar like Tetris. So you have a 2 hour block for family time. You have a 2 hour block for exercise. I have a 1 hour block for emails. I have a 1 hour block for learning. So like literally build the blocks on your calendar. And I try, it's a journey to give myself, because I like mentoring and talking to people, but I also need to manage that better. So there's 2 hours a week that are available for this, of like mentoring and talking to someone that I don't know. So it's like, okay, this is what's available. This is what it looks like. And my initial sort of feedback when I first heard about you build all of the blocks and then you fill in what you do was, you can't tell me what to do. I like having freedom. I like being able to like do whatever I feel like. And this is too constricting. And then it was reframed with, no, you can move the blocks. You go to the gym at 6. What if I want to take a class at 7? You're like, that's cool. You just move that block down. And then
yeah.
all of a sudden it creates the freedom just to say, I can move things around, but here's the blocks that need to exist. And I won't delete, but I'll move.
Yeah. I'm going to actually pose a question here, pull an audible. This is from Katie Davis. How do you keep other people respecting your blocks? If you're not the boss and your boss comes in with a task, what would you do?
I saw that and I was like about to start typing and then you said you were going to ask it.
Yeah.
That to me is just like relying on candid conversations about what works for you and doesn't work for you as a team member, whether you're the boss or not. I think there's got to be mutual respect in order to have that conversation. So if that doesn't exist, you might need to start questioning, are you in the right organization for what is going to make you most productive as a professional? I know here at 368, and I've been with the team for 6 years now. And so there are deep-seated relationships. There's a lot of mutual respect. There's the ability to have candid conversations, even if they might be uncomfortable, and say how we're really feeling and talk that out. We've had to have those conversations with each other throughout the years as times get busy of like, hey, this is a boundary for me that I need to be able to set and for you guys to respect. So I would say it just has to be candid conversation about that.
I love to hear from Lauren and John too, especially you, Lauren, because what if your CEO comes in? It's like, yo, I need this.
I mean, that might have happened this week. I will have the like ideal world, but I'm a realist on everything. There are some times where I'm like, look, I don't work in my evenings. I block my evenings so I can have my self-care and my recovery. And this is what I do. Maybe my boss asked me to do something this week. And I was like, oh crap, I don't have time to get that done until 8 o'clock tonight. And there are times that I'm like, look, it totally breaks flow and it breaks all of my principles of like, here's the time blocks and this is what I have to do. The once in a while, we all need to give ourselves permission to be imperfect. Once in a while, if you're like, okay, look, I have to work late today. This was supposed to be my deep work time or my learning time, and I need to give it up right now. I'm okay with that. And it's like, be okay with that. Where it's not okay, it is every day is a fire drill. Every day it's, hey, John, I know this is your flow time, but I need you to attend this meeting and I need you to do this, this, and this, and here's a pile of work. That's when it's not okay. And to Kara's point, that's when it's like, have the conversation. This is what I need. How do we do this? And then decide if this is a go, no go for you. Once in a while is okay for me personally. Also, if you somehow have like an emergency time block in there.
No, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's part of the key. I mean, I'm not sure I can add to what Lauren said. I think that is kind of spot on what she said. But we also talk with our team about don't schedule every minute of your day.
Yeah.
Schedule some time and just leave it as, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do in this block, but something's going to happen in this block.
Yeah.
and that allows for those kind of fire drills that we try to minimize. The other thing I would say is I always try to negotiate, right? Which is, okay, if you need this now, is there something else I'm working on that we can delay, right? So can I swap something out in that time block that I need to get done? And like Lauren said, that sometimes there's a very real scenario where as long as it's not happening every day, that I'm going to have to live with the reality that there is something that needs to get done now.
Yeah, give yourself grace. Yeah, grace is very much important. So we're going to tackle the second elephant in the room as promised here is, Lauren, you're on the brand side. John and Kara, you are on the agency side. Flow state's very important to get into rhythms, but in like client relationships, what happens here is that there are so many meetings for like to discuss deliverables. There's so many rhythms. I want to ask like John and Kara this. Like Kara, you go first. What questions or rhythms do you think agencies are scared to bring to folks like Lauren when it comes to creating like boundaries between clients and agency? Lauren's cool enough to answer.
The biggest piece of feedback that we kept hearing when we first presented Flow Plan and then asked for feedback was like, how is this going to be possible with clients? And then this sort of hum of fear that existed that we were going to piss off our clients and then they weren't going to come back and work with us or they wouldn't be reasonable. I don't like that there's that fear there. And what we're trying to do is change the perspective, not only internally, but also with our clients that like, this is in service to everyone. This is, if we've got happy, productive people because they're able to get really great work done, that makes better work, which makes better for the client. So there was this fear that like clients aren't going to be receptive and we're still working through it. We've had conversations with some, others we're just nudging them in that direction and not having to be really blatant about like, you can only schedule meetings in a certain time because it's not valuable to say it that way. But to me, the big thing that we heard was, how are our clients going to receive this? And a little bit of a fear that it wasn't going to be possible. And we haven't been in it that long, so we're still navigating when it's okay to break flow and also how to still balance like client expectations and servicing them really well, but not letting that be the detriment of the work product, because in the end, that's not going to serve the client well either. So that's the big fear. And I think we're still navigating how to make sure that we're doing that well.
Yeah, I mean, to add on to that, I would say that there's a real fear that our clients are ogres and they're demanding, and we are in client service, right? That's the business we're in. But as Kara said, the idea can be presented that we're trying to give you, the client, our very best possible work. And that can only happen when they are granted the time to work. Right. And what I found, I've been both client side and agency side in my career. And what I found is clients can be very reasonable people if you just talk with them.
We got Lauren to prove that. See, it's like they do exist on the other side.
Totally. And I mean, I think we are terrible ogres and horribly scary. But I mean, it just goes to sort of expectation settings, and it's client agency, it's boss, employee, it's all of that. It's so many headaches come from a misalignment of expectations. And if John is like, hey, so this is what we're going to do. We'll meet with you on this date. This is what we're working on. Here's deliverables. If something changes, we'll let you know.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, great. People get stressed where it's like, John has completely disappeared. I have not heard from him. I'm assuming you're doing nothing, so I'm freaking out. But if you're like, no, I'm going to talk to you on Thursday, and on Thursday, you're going to get this. And if anything changes, I'll just give you a heads up. I think people are generally reasonable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and if you've selected the right, like if you're really true and clear on your mission and your vision and your purpose as a company,
Yeah.
you've likely selected the type of clients who also are in service to that. And so they are going to be reasonable. And we've experienced that in this transition when we've had to have those conversations. And again, to that grace and flexibility, knowing that it's not going to serve every client. And so what can we do to inch towards a middle ground, right? Maybe it's that we do touch base every week, but every other week it's written communication instead of on the call, or we put our, our makers is our production team as focusing and we take it as admin staff, right? So how can we balance that and make a middle ground? So it's never going to be a one size fits all. I think there's like give and take that has to happen across every client as well, to make it really work.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Jeremy posted something in the chat just now that was like, the underlying truth is most people would want to have fewer meetings and less confusion. And one thing that it triggered in my head is because I'm in meetings all day. Yes, I would love to have fewer meetings. And then all of a sudden I went, except that time where we met every day for 2 hours and we got a group together and it was like, we're meeting a lot. And all of a sudden I went, oh, those weren't meetings. Those were group flow sessions.
Yeah.
Because we weren't meeting to like, let's have a readout and let's, Kenny, update me on your progress. And then we're going to have a meeting about like discussing the output from a meeting and next steps for a meeting. Like, no, this is a working session. This is the whole purpose is group flow.
Yes.
And like for that, if your meetings are like group flow sessions where we're all doing something together, like I will take those all the time.
Yeah.
That's
such
something
a-
we had to learn too.
Yeah.
We actually just implemented a twice a week full company 30-minute stand-up that goes through every project and every deliverable and just tracks whether they're on track or off track. And that we're expecting that to eliminate other meetings to do that communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
So I'm going to close out with two questions here for everyone here. Is first is, oh look, Laura, you have another.
Yeah.
She's a great leader, by the way.
Convert.
Thanks,
Like-
Lisa. We're hiring.
So first is that people crave being in flow state, yet are so scared to embrace a calendar that intentionally gives space for it. Like, what is more in your head than actual reality? What do y'all think?
I'll answer this first. I'm a doer. Like I love that. I get a lot of energy from that. But then as I started to like transition into other roles where thinking about the things you're doing before you do them was more valuable, I had to realize that it's important to give that space, and that being in back-to-back meetings or stacking every moment of your calendar is not actually what's going to be in service to those great ideas and that deep flow state. So for me, it was feeling like I wasn't being productive in getting in these big, calendar blocks of flow and like thinking. And as I've kind of transitioned into different roles, it's more important to be in that. So I think that was my fear at first. And what I was scared to embrace is that I'm not going to be doing as much, or I'm not going to be doing as much anymore, checking off a bunch of tasks in the day. But what I am doing is much larger and has more impact. So just shifting that mindset, and I'm still working through it. I still have a stacked calendar. Lauren, some of the stuff you've said, I want to like apply big, broader stuff that doesn't require any kind of actual action items to come out of it, just space to think and space to process. Like that is, that's huge. And so I was just scared to actually not feel like I was contributing. Contribution looks different now. So
Yeah.
One thing
Lauren,
that
what do you think?
Ooh,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh
sorry.
yeah, all you. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. One thing that I do, which I've realized because like I struggle with idle time and the like sit like this is your time to sit down and to like do something. One of the other things that I took away a lot from the class was we only have so much like processing power in our brains and like ability to make decisions. So
Mhm.
like I've removed low value tasks, not just for time, but because I can't expend my energy thinking about this. So things that I put in my administration blocks and blocks on my time that are like do these boring activities, I literally write what I'm supposed to do in them. So this is your like 2-hour block of deep work. By the time I sit down, I'm like, wait a second, what am I supposed to work on? What am I supposed to focus on? So don't use your mind as storage and waste space for storage on what to do.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
make your calendar your storage. It's like,
Yeah.
you have an hour. Here's the things you need to do in that hour.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
John,
Yeah.
what you thinking?
Well, just to kind of add on to what Lauren said, we also teach and use the getting things done methodology, which absolutely talks about getting it out of your head and onto either a file, a to-do list, or a calendar block, so that when you have that time to sit down and think about a specific subject, A, you know what you're talking about, or you're supposed to be working on or thinking about. And B, you don't have these little things that are just poking at your head going, okay, well, did you remember to buy the cat food? Or did you remember to do this? Or did you remember to, the way that we try to work is I get it out of my head and on paper. It doesn't matter what that topic is. I get it out. And when I say paper, I really mean something digital.
Yeah.
But I get it into Todoist, I get it into Evernote, or I get it onto my calendar. And then I really have that mind space to think about what I'm doing. And I really like what Kara said. Over my career has changed from very much a doing person to a planning person. And in the last 2 years with COVID and this impending recession that everyone's worried about, what that planning I'm doing a lot right now is contingency planning. It's just, hey, what are the different scenarios that might happen? But you've got to have that brain space to be able to sit down and think about that.
100%.
100%. So closing question here, then of course, y'all, I would hope y'all would ask questions here in the chat as well. If someone were to take action in the next 72 hours to build flow state intentionally in their lives or their team's lives, what would you recommend them to do? John, I'm going to go back to you first, then Lauren, then Kara.
My two immediate things would be to evaluate how you're using the tools that you use in your life and evaluate whether calendar blocking works for you, because I've seen it be very productive in the teams that we lead at Idea Grove. And so those would be the 72-hour action items. Kenny, I've given you a list of readings that I know we're going to distribute. There's a lot of information out there about like getting things done. Deep Work is a great book. The flow state, there's a book by the gentleman that Lauren took the class from about flow state, which is really good. I'm very much a big reader, and there's not a lot of things that I do originally. I steal a lot of really good ideas.
Lauren?
So everything John just said. I will focus on active recovery because it's the thing that I have struggled with the most. So it's like make new mistakes, don't make mine. Going for a walk outside or a walk in nature is so powerful, and it is active recovery. There's also the idea that motion and like you're moving forward and the world is moving behind you, that does some really cool stuff to your brain that starts to reset your brain. So it's like, don't walk on a treadmill, like go physically move outside whenever you can. Like get that in for half an hour, get off a Zoom, do a walk and talk, or just go and move outside. It is so restorative. If you are having a bad day, you are stuck in a problem, you are like pissed at the universe,
Walk it out.
walk it out.
Walk it
It
out.
will work so well. And then one of the things that John said is the like, get it out of your head and write it on paper. I don't know about other people, but if you've woken up in the middle of the night and you're like, I can't go back to sleep because everything is ruminating, pen and paper, you're next to your bed, write it down, because something about getting it out of your brain will make you able to more often than not actually go back to sleep. And sleep is one of the most important things. It's the thing we all are like, I don't need to sleep. I'm so tough. I only need 4 hours a day. F that noise. Get some sleep. I didn't curse. It is the best thing that you can do is like, try to figure out whatever you can do to actually sleep. It's one of the most important things you can do.
I had one of those moments the other day. Woke up at 2:30 in the morning with an idea and I was like, write it down. And then I was able to go back to sleep. It was magical.
Yeah.
My perspective is more from the team side, like implementation, which, as we mentioned, John gave us a great roadmap to understand some of the things that they did. We have a lot of structures and systems that are eerily similar to Idea Grove, which made it a lot easier. But one of the things that I recommend, and I spoke about earlier, is just one of the first things you can do from a team side is understanding where your team is at on their understanding of flow. And also once you've got that kind of baseline of here's what flow state could look like, getting their feedback on it, really understanding what do they see as the pros, what do they see as the roadblocks, and any idea that they might have about true ways to implement this, because they're doing the work. They understand more about that than you will if you're not in the work on a day-to-day basis. So I think really asking those questions and surveying your team to say, hey, with this in mind, what do you guys think? What could work? What would be the roadblocks to get to this point? And really make sure you're creating something that's not devoid of that feedback from your actual team.
Yeah. No, thank y'all for sharing. That's all great 72-hour feedback. In fact, y'all, if you signed up for this, we're going to follow up with an email right after here with the resources that they were talking about as well. So don't worry, y'all will get something in the inbox later today. I want to give us this, like, we have like 7 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Brittany's here, says, thank you all so much. We want to hear them. Like, we got 7 minutes left. Anything on your minds here? I like to cheat and ask the first question here is, just hearing like what everyone's talking about, like self-care and everything. What are some of the self-care things, like besides massages and like working out? What are things that we don't think about are actually self-care?
Sleep. I felt like Lauren mentioned
Sleep.
that.
Yeah, sleep.
For me, and it's funny, I'll see if I can find this and send it to you to send out, because there's literally like, they did all of this research on like, here's the actual, like, here's the 9 most important things. And I can recover. And it's like, restorative yoga, like literally like foam rolling is on there, which is great. But one of the things, for me is the low value tasks, high value tasks. If it is a low value task and you can remove it from your life, remove it from your life. Like, I hate cooking for myself. Like, if it is just for me, I hate it. I will do meal delivery. If like Kara's coming over, I love to cook and I love to have that. So for me, it's like high value activity. My recovery is like being around people that I value. So I will focus of like, how can I do that? And I will not do meal delivery for you, Kara. I will actually like make food and greatly enjoy it.
Have a date. I was thinking that same thing. I'm highly extroverted. And so I actually get energy from being around people. So most of my weekends consist of plans with friends and like back-to-back stuff, which some people look and they're like, that's gotta be draining. And I'm like, no. For me, that is where I get my energy from. And I still need my breaks every now and then, my me time. And that's where, like, being able to sit at home on a Sunday and just read or watch TV comes into play. But being around friends, that's another kind of self-care activity for me that gives me so much joy that I try and prioritize on a regular basis.
John, is it sailing for you?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's definitely being out on the water for me, or being under the water for me, is a big self-care item. But one of the things that we learned through the pandemic is that we could, in our jobs, work from almost anywhere. And so travel for me is a big self-care item. And I happen to be sitting in Durango, Colorado right now with my team back in Dallas. And I've been here all summer. And I'm thankful for that because it's 112 degrees in Dallas.
Oh.
And it has been all summer long. So
I'm in Vancouver right now. Got out of San Francisco because
Oh, you did go to
you
Vancouver.
said you were going to travel.
I am. This is my Airbnb background with the
With the
birds.
Wondering about the
birds.
chicken
Birds.
birds in the background. Yeah, that's fun.
Yes. But yeah,
Yeah.
when you can work from anywhere, why are you working from where you are? I just be intentional. Like
Yeah.
if you're working from your house because you love working from your house, or like your kids have to go to school the next day, so it's hard for them to like not be near the school. Totally makes sense. Be intentional. I like John, am intentionally not being in my house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And like, of course, anyone that has questions, feel free to follow up in the follow-up email. You'll be hearing from us. I'm going to go ahead and give everyone 3 minutes back of their time today to make it to their next thing. But thank you so much, John, Lauren, and Kara for sharing. This is one of my most favorite personal webinars because I learned so much. And y'all in the chat, thank these folks here because they shared some knowledge, y'all. Like this was freaking awesome. Brian says, thank you here. Maria,
for
thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. But with that being said, stay tuned for August's next webinar. We're going to have some fun, hopefully talking some strategy here. But until then, find that intentional time for self-care. That's a common theme here. And self-care for you might look different for me, but that's perfectly okay. Make time for that joy. Make time for that happiness. That's important. So thank you all so much. Take care until next time, y'all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Peace.